So I almost forgot to film a video today, and it's really important that I do because I'm doing a 90-day challenge, which with a bunch of other wonderful people to post for 90 days and probably beyond. And what I want to talk about is super relevant to this. So I had this, I call them downloads, but it's basically just ideas, right? There's lots of spiritual language around things that can just be understood with more plain language and terminology. So if you're not into the spiritual stuff, if you're not into what I am reclaiming as the woo or the woo woo, I apologize if that offends anybody, but you don't necessarily have to resonate with that. But something that did occur to me today through experiencing it was this really important message of, it sounds so simple, but don't get distracted. And so I was like, well, distracted from what? This comes from having had an experience today when I was walking home from downtown. I live in a very walkable city, and it was gorgeous. And so I was on my way from running some errands. And I was walking through a park, and I had a download, if you will, or an idea. And I'm going to get into it in a minute. But it was something I had never thought of before. And it was a way to conceptualize certain spiritual things in a way that just, it shifted my perspective. This probably sounds very vague, but I'll get into it. But I got home, and then I got distracted. Now, here on YouTube, this is a place where I'm creating something to share with other people, and I like it here because I love long form content. If you've been watching my videos, you can tell that I'm a rambler. If you're into human design, I'm a self-projected projector. I like to talk, and I like storytelling as well. I like doing the channeled messages. I like doing tarot and oracle. But I ended up getting onto YouTube and getting distracted, like for a really long time, a shockingly long time. And it occurred to me that, number one, I personally have a goal of being more of a creator than a consumer. I think that that is really important. It's how we, in my mind, fight really heavy things that are going on in this world. It's so easy to get overwhelmed because there's so much happening in this world. And if you feel overwhelmed, please know that you're not alone. There's so much happening. And also, we have the internet. We are connected to so much information, more information than our brains are designed to hold, to perceive, to process. We are not designed for the amount of information that we encounter every single day. So just know that if you feel overwhelmed, it actually makes a lot of sense. And it can be really, really powerful for us to prioritize creativity. When I'm not doing the channeling stuff, when I'm not doing therapist things or coach things, tarot, I am a DJ and I'm learning to produce music, and I absolutely love it. And I'm creative in other ways too. You can literally be a creative physicist or mathematician. You don't have to be just a painter or musician, right? But I firmly believe that one of the ways that we fight darkness in this world and all of the heaviness that is happening that can oftentimes feel so incredibly out of our control, we counteract that by shining bright, by shining a light, setting an example through our presence. It doesn't mean you have to show up on social media all the time. You don't have to do that, but it's about being creative, creating things, even if it's just for yourself, but ideally sharing your creativity with the rest of the world to set an example, to let them know that even in times of darkness, creativity and shining your light, we need it more than ever. We need it more than ever. So in the YouTube space, I really am a believer in being a creator, ideally more than being a consumer. And I ended up coming home from this walk and having had this realization, which I'll tell you about in a second, but immediately getting distracted. And I was just reflecting on it, and it made me think about how potentially when you have a breakthrough, when you have a download, when you have a realization or something really clicks for you, and all of a sudden you're looking at your life and the world around you and your own journey from a very different perspective, which is the goal of walking the spiritual path, if that's something that you're interested in. I don't know if there's a better word for it. Like, sometimes I don't like calling it the spiritual path because not everyone identifies with that. But not everyone's into calling it self-development either, and not everyone wants to call it healing. I don't really know how to describe it. It's just being on your journey and the learnings, the recognitions, the revelations that you have, that kind of thing. I think that sometimes when you have one that's quite profound and it really shifts how you look at the world, and it may impact how you move through the world in your life, it'll shift it significantly. It's as if the parts of us that are still scared to make those changes really dig their heels in. This is like how in psychology, I've heard from a mentor before that you only heal as quickly as the slowest part of you. So if you're thinking about your mind, your consciousness, your psychology as a collection of different parts, a cast of characters. It's called parts work or internal family systems. You know, we can only move as quickly on our path as the slowest part, because when it gets overwhelmed or scared, those parts really start to dig their heels in and they slow us down. And sometimes we come to just a standstill or a grinding halt because you've got different parts of you in opposition because they have very different goals, right? And so I think that the distraction factor, when you have a breakthrough of some sort, it can be like this expansion really rapidly through this realization, and then there's a contraction that can happen quite soon after. But that contraction doesn't always look like shutdown. It can look like self-doubt. It can look like forgetting what your breakthrough was. It can look like getting distracted, and that's what happened to me. So, a significant amount of time later, I recognized that I was on my computer, so I don't know if it counts as doom scrolling, but it was the equivalent, right? And I had to take a step back. Number one, because I don't want to fry my brain. I was like, oh, so much information. I'm taking in so much information. And yes, I am a lifelong learner. Great. But this was not nourishing information. This was, whoa, I'm going down the rabbit hole of stuff that is not helpful and I don't need to be thinking about in this moment. And it's a distraction from the expansive thought that I had. The I don't have a better word, like, not revelation in a religious sense. It was just like a revelation of like, aha, oh, I have this new framework, a new, I call it like thought model, or it could be like a thought experiment. I look at a lot of things like manifestation and the techniques that are used to describe how to do manifestation. I do believe in the more mystical aspects of it, but there's lots of people who don't resonate with that. So I also like to describe these as just thought experiments or thought models, things that you can try. So when I had one that really was an aha moment today, it's interesting now to observe the snapback, where there was this rapid expansion of the consciousness, and then a part of me decided to go into distraction mode, because it was like, well, what are you going to do with that new information? Whether it's true or not, it's simply a new idea, but it was a new idea that felt so profound that there were other parts that just went, whoa, 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 hang on a second. I don't want to look at things that way. And I didn't even notice that I was going into distraction. So I'm hopping on here, creating this video. Don't know if it's going to land with everybody. I'm sure it sounds a little bit vague, but the point of it is just to encourage you to do your best not to get distracted, and try not to numb out. Try not to avoid when you have basically a revelation, whether it's shadow work and it's really difficult. I've had a few of those recently, and it's been this really rapid expansion through looking at things that I did not want to look at about myself. And ultimately, in looking at them, yeah, it's tough, but shadow work It's not for the faint of heart. It's not something to do when you're in a trauma spiral. Take it from a person trained as a therapist, because it can bring up a lot of shame. Shadow work is something that we bravely step into because it allows us to see the parts of us that have been in the shadows of our unconscious, and then we have to reckon with them in order to make a change. And it can be really hard. It can feel like a slap in the face, or we're blindsided. Something gets reflected back to us that we totally didn't see, and it can trigger shame. So you have to be in a pretty good place to be able to handle shadow work. But these revelations, they can come in the form of shadow work, or they can come in the form of a really beautiful breakthrough or recognition, realization, which can be spiritual or not. It just depends on how you perceive it. But that expansion of consciousness, of things that are now in your awareness, whether they feel heavy or whether they feel really light, it's still an expansion of awareness. And that can trigger parts of us that freak out and they go into shutdown. So think about when you are faced with things that overwhelm you, whether they feel like really positive, exciting things, or really negative and things that we don't want to experience. Basically, it's overload of the mind, of the emotions, of energy, and basically your nervous system. The avoidance and the distraction can show up in the form of consuming too much, which ultimately doesn't actually soothe the nervous system or calm us down. Distractions, depending on which form they come in, can overwhelm us even further. So it's something that I feel is important to communicate about. As you expand your consciousness, your awareness, it's important to be able to not go into numbing out or be pulled into things that take you away from whatever it is that you're learning. Doesn't mean being stuck on what I call the hamster wheel of healing forever. You don't have to be so reflective. Like you don't need to be picking yourself apart at all times. You really don't. I think we can get very lost in the sauce when it comes to self-development and self-improvement and healing work, where it's like we just get perpetually stuck in this, and it's like not all of it is a test. Sometimes stuff just happens in life. You can choose to learn from it, but you also don't have to learn from it right away. I can't remember if I touched on that in the previous video where I was talking about how you don't always have to be the bigger person. I think sometimes if you're into self-development, you can feel like this weird spiritual self-development perfectionism where it's like, I must find the golden nugget, the silver lining. I must go straight to understanding and integrating the lesson from this challenge from the universe. And it's like, yes, emotional maturity is great, but also sometimes it serves us to just have a little bit of righteous rage or just be like, oh my God, I don't know what the lesson is here and I don't want to know. Not right now. Like, it's okay. It's okay to not immediately go to trying to find the lesson. Anyways, but don't get distracted from your path. Don't allow yourself to get sucked into doom scrolling or going down really negative rabbit holes in social media. Be able to pull yourself back, stay anchored, write the stuff down, and then leave it alone for a little while. I took notes in my phone. I also have like a zillion of these notebooks. It's not a fancy journal. It's just these ones that I used to like have in grade school. I can't remember if I found these if this was at a yard sale, or I think it was just like on recycling day. I found a bunch of these in like someone's recycling bin, and I was like, why would you throw these away? These are great. So now I've got a bunch of them. But write the stuff down, and then you can like take a pause, but don't get distracted from your path. Don't do that. Anyways, that felt really important. Let's see, what else did I like channeled this and I wrote it down. Yeah. That was pretty much it. That was the channeled message. I think I can make a different video where I tell you about the breakthrough that I had today, but this is my message of love to you, is just to encourage you to stay anchored. There's so much noise in the online space right now that it's really hard to tell what to be focusing on. I am a firm believer in staying up to date on what is going on in the world. Pardon me. Oh, I always film these like at nighttime. It's important to stay up to date, but there's also so much happening that it can be overwhelming. So give yourself grace. You don't need to know everything at all times. You don't need to get lost in it, and you also don't need to numb out by going even deeper into things that aren't important at all. Give yourself a break, read a book, watch a movie, go for a walk, call a friend, make something creative, make your own video, practice an instrument. I like to DJ, that's what I do, among other things. Give yourself that spaciousness, and remember that in this world where so much madness is going on, we need your creativity. We need your creativity, your unique magic. It's literally what's going to save the world. In my humble opinion, your creativity is what is going to save this world. We need to be sharing our light. So don't get distracted. Stay on track. And if you find yourself going on a mental or emotional side quest, just come back around, steer the horse back to the main path, and know that your creativity is so needed in this world. All right, sending lots of love.